All right, hello. So I am going to start doing my book reviews again, and my brother brought a book back from the monastery this week. It's called The Holy and Glorious Great Martyr Phanarius, The Newly Revealed: Life, Miracles, and Supplicatory Canon, Volumes 1 and 2. And it's published by, I think it's the Holy Transfiguration Monastery. Nope. It's published and printed in Canada by the Hermitage of the Meeting of the Lord, Camano Island in Washington. That's Washington State. Icons and sketches courtesy of the Holy Nativity Convent, Holy Transfiguration Monastery, Brookline, Massachusetts. The life of the saint was translated from the New Chian Spiritual Meadow, Athens, Seven Hill, 1968, Greek, by the Holy Transfiguration Monastery. Liturgical text, copyright of the Holy Transfiguration Monastery. So, I'm guessing you can order this book from the monastery, though, or the Brookline, Massachusetts Holy Transfiguration Monastery probably sells it, or you can get it from the Hermitage of the Meeting of the Lord in Camano Island, Washington. I want to kind of skip to his story. Now, this book is full of all kinds of people who have had miracles that have been worked by this saint from our modern times, which makes it an interesting and fun read. So, let's see here. Saint Phanarius is a very loved saint to everyone who knows him. And he is especially called upon to help people find things that are lost. And so he always makes, one person says, quote, Saint Phanarius always makes me feel like I'm praying. When I pray to him, I know that he hears me because he answers, end quote. So there's a lot of different traditions about asking Saint Phanarius. One of the most popular ones is you make a vow to bake him a cake, which is called a Phaneropita. And you bring it to church, and the priest blesses it, and then of course everybody shares it in church. There's tons of examples of this happening. A lot of people ask what the recipe is for the cake, and basically it's any type of cake. The main ingredient is your love and piety with which you fulfill the vow. Sometimes the cake is brought with a request to the saint, and sometimes it's brought out of gratitude for a prayer that was answered. There's an example of someone at the Holy Nativity Convent in Brookline. Someone brought a cake in to ask St. Phanarius to help him find a house. The next week they brought another cake in, and someone assumed that they were asking for prayers again, and they were like, no, this is out of gratitude. We got a house this week. So they were doing it to thank him. So the life of Saint Phanarius. This is interesting. So this saint is a martyr, and I can't read it because I don't want to violate the copyrights, but I can kind of paraphrase what happens. So basically, we don't know. We know he's a martyr, but we don't know where he came from or who his parents were, or even when he lived. And they don't know who the emperor was that he was persecuted by. And they haven't been able to figure it out. So you're like, well, how do we even know this guy's for real? Okay, well, I'm getting there. So in the year 1500, the Hagarenes ruled Rhodes. It's an island. And after they conquered it, the ruler wanted to rebuild the walls of the city. And on the outside of town, there were a lot of ruined buildings that were part of the old city. And out of those ruins, the Hagarenes gathered a bunch of stones to make the repairs on the walls. And while they were digging in that area, they found a really beautiful church that was partially ruined. And while they were excavating, they found a lot of holy icons. And all of them were decayed and basically unrecognizable. But one of the icons was found as if it had just been painted, like that very day. It was just like in pristine condition. And after the church had been uncovered, along with its icons, the bishop of that place, his name was Nilus, was well known to be a very holy man and very well educated. He came and read the icon, and it said Saint Phanarius on it. Now, the icon had a painting of, or was depicted, was Saint Phanarius as being a young man, and he was dressed as a soldier, and he was holding a cross in his right hand. And the upper part of the cross, there was a lighted candle. And around the edges of the icon were 12 scenes from the saint's martyrdom. One of them showed him being judged, and another one showed him being beaten by soldiers in the face and head with stones. And another one, he was laid down on the ground and being whipped by the soldiers. In another one, he was naked and they put iron hooks in his body. In another one, they had him in a dungeon. And then in another one, they had him standing before the court again, tribunal. And then there were other scenes that showed him being burned, bound to a rack, thrown in with a bunch of wild animals, crushed with a big giant rock, standing before idols, having to hold burning coals in his hands, while a demon is flying in the air above and crying because he won't drop the incense. That was one of the tortures they used to do to Orthodox Christians, is they would try to make them sacrifice to idols. And one of the sacrifices to idols is to light incense, and as if with prayers or whatever. And so they would try to force the saints to offer incense to these idols by lighting charcoal with incense in their hands, and the saints would stand there and hold the incense burning in their hands, refusing to drop it because they refused to offer it to the idols. It was a form of torture, trying to get Christians to give in. But the picture shows Saint Phanarius with his hands lifted up towards heaven and praying, even though his hands are burning from the incense, which is offering his incense to God instead of the idol. So out of these 12 pictures, the hierarch figured out that the saint was a martyr. And so the bishop sent people to the rulers asking if they could give him some money to restore the temple, but they refused. So the bishop went by himself to Constantinople and asked for a decree giving him the power to rebuild the church from the emperor. And it was restored. And it can still be seen to this day outside the city. And its shrine has worked. It's been the site of many miracles. And this book is full of them. So at that time, the Isle of Crete didn't have any Christian bishops. There was only a Latin bishop, and the Venetians made a law that it was not permitted for new Orthodox Christian bishops to be consecrated whenever they died. And their whole thinking was that they would gradually, wean them off of Orthodox Christianity so they could take over as Latins, the Roman Catholics. But that didn't work. The Orthodox Christians that would go to Cythera or Cirigo, and they would get ordained as bishops there, and then they would come back. There were 3 bishops that were made bishops, and they were on their way back and traveling by sea, but the Hagarenes captured them at sea and took them to Rhodes, and they were sold as slaves to other people there. And they were priests, not bishops, I'm sorry. And they, of course, these priests were crying day and night and praying for God to intercede on their behalf and help them. And they heard about this Saint Phanarius, who worked miracles on a regular basis. So they started praying to him and asking him with tears to save them and get them released from their slavery. Each of them did this separately because they were sold to different masters. And each of them individually, without knowing it, that the others were doing it, all got permission from their masters to go worship this saint at his temple. And by God's providence, they all happened to show up there at the same time. So all 3 of them fell down together and cried and begged Saint Phanarius to pray for them and help them to be released. So the saint had compassion upon them. He heard them from heaven by God's grace, and he answered their prayers. And that night he appeared to their masters and commanded them to release, to allow them to worship at his temple, or he would bring destruction on them. The Hagarenes figured it was some sort of sorcery. So to punish the priests, they put heavy chains on them and made them even suffer more. Well, the great Martyr Phanarius went to the priest that night and he set them free. And he encouraged them and told them that the next day he would do everything he could to free them. Then he appeared to the Hagarenes and rebuked them severely and told them if they didn't release their priest by the next day, that they would see the power of God. Then the saint vanished after saying that, and sure enough, everyone in the houses of those masters, from children, servants, everybody, young and old, small and great, woke up blind and paralyzed and in horrible pain. Now, even though they were bedridden, they tried to figure out what they were going to do to help themselves and their relatives. So they decided to send for their slaves, and the three slave priests came to their masters and asked if they could heal them. And the priest answered, quote, on our part we shall beseech God, but whatever he wills he shall do, end quote. St. Phanarius appeared to the Hagarenes after 3 nights and told them if they don't send letters releasing their priests, they won't get their health or their sight. So after they talked amongst themselves with their relatives, they wrote letters to set the slaves free and left them at the icon of the saint. And before the servants of these masters had even gotten back home from the temple where they'd left those letters free in the priest. Even before they got back home, everybody at that home had been paralyzed and blind was healed. They were all back to normal. They set the priests free and sent them home to their homes, and did so with love and kindness. And the priest had a copy of the icon of Saint Phanarius painted and took it with them to their own country. And so they continued to celebrate the memory of Saint Phanarius, through whose holy intercessions, O Christ our God, have mercy upon us. Amen. So this is something that Protestants are not really familiar with. They think it's worshiping saints, but really we're not worshiping saints. When we honor them and we pray to them, it's no different than going to your pastor and asking him to pray for you and lay his hands on you, or to your mom or your dad and asking them to pray for you, or a close friend, or a living priest, or your whatever, whoever. It's no different than asking anybody else. And as for the icons, it's the same thing. We all have pictures of family members, and those pictures are representations of those people that we love. And it's not uncommon for people that are separated from their family members to kiss the pictures out of love, as a connection to them and their hearts, their soul. You see this a lot with soldiers. You see this a lot with family members who've lost their parents or loved ones or children. It's a spiritual, physical representation of them in the image of God. Now, we worship God. We're all created in the image and likeness of God. We don't worship wood and paint or photographs. We're worshiping God and the image of God in these saints, and the holiness of God in the lives of these saints. All good is from God. The saints themselves, consider themselves sinners, though many valiantly acknowledge their service and devotion to God. We all fall short, and so these are well known from the beginning of the church, from the time of the apostles. Saint Luke wrote the Gospel of Luke, painted the first icon of Mary, of the Mother of God, Theotokos. That's what Theotokos means. It means Mother of God. So she was the mother of Jesus, and Jesus is the Son of God, one of the Trinity. So I love reading the lives of the saints. And this book, this is what it looks like. If you order it, it's full of people, including my stepbrother, had something written in here, giving examples of miracles that they experienced firsthand in their lives. And so I recommend you check it out. All right, well, pray for me, a sinner. God bless. Over and out.